Hey guys, welcome back to the Mental Game podcast. I'm your host, Nikhil Mathur, and I hope everyone's having a brilliant week and day. This is episode 6. I hope everyone has been enjoying the episodes, have been learning quite a bit about mental health as well as the ability to deal with negativity. Before starting off this episode is going to be a bit different. And you'd notice that this episode is going to be a bit more raw. I'm not going to edit this episode as much as I do with the others because I want you guys to realize that perfection is not required at every instance. Now, that's the main topic of today's episode, perfection. Now, it's crucial that I tell you guys that I'm not perfect. And majority of the videos I make are about battling negativity and utilizing positivity instead. But in reality of it, I am faced with a lot of negativity in my life. And at times I find it very hard to convert it into positivity. And sometimes I fall into the trap of doing the things I preach. For example, not comparing myself, or not loving myself, or not looking at the bigger picture. I often fall into the trap of those mindsets. For example, just the other day, I was comparing myself to other people in the gym. And then I sort of had to bring myself to the center line and say, right, you've preached all of this. Now it's crucial you implement it as well. And that's what I'm trying to do. And that's the main idea of this podcast. It's not that, this person is perfect. This person who's narrating this podcast is perfect and has no issues and knows everything. Well, that's not true. This podcast's main purpose is to narrate the story of the lessons learned and the observations I made throughout the journey. So, this brings me on to my next point, is that nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect in any way or sense. Striving for perfection is not a bad thing. It's not at all. But it is a bad thing when it comes with its side effects and consequences, and when striving for perfection is abused. Now, what do I mean by that? And you're probably wondering, what do you mean by abusing the notion of striving for perfection? Well, I'm not sure if you guys watched the movie Black Swan. Alright, it's Natalie Portman. Very, very good movie. I absolutely loved it. And in that movie, she is a ballet dancer. And she has been, I think, training for most of her life and sort of dedicated to the game. And long story short, she sort of strived for perfection. She strived for perfection, and whenever she did not reach those benchmarks she set herself, she often used to beat herself up. And along the journey of striving for perfection, she used to compare herself to other people. And she used to pull herself down and try to pull others down as well. So the notion of striving for perfection and abusing that notion is dangerous. In that movie, it is totally visible. She beat herself up and she got lost in chaos in her own head and brain. She was tired of running a race she simply couldn't finish. So I've also sort of dealt with this in a way where, and this sort of comes with mental health specifically. When I find myself comparing myself to other people, when I find myself not being confident, when I find myself not looking my best, I often beat myself up. I say, oh my God, what's wrong with me? I need to be this and that. I need to be this perfect state in order to be the best version of myself. Oh my God, I'm not that perfect state. And I start pulling myself down and start saying, right, I'm not worthy no more. In order to be worthy, I need to achieve that sort of perfected state. And that is a very scary part of striving for perfection. Is that you're setting too much of a vigorous benchmark for yourself. Where if you don't meet it, you start just beating yourself up. And sometimes you also beat other people up. You take out your anger on other people. And sometimes your benchmarks are on other people. You say, oh, I need to be like him. And because you're trying to be like him, you realize that, you're copying the mannerisms of that person and you're losing your authentic version. So there's so many, consequences and branches to sort of striving for perfection. On the other hand, perfection can be used as a catalyst for growth, catalyst for improvement, catalyst for setting goals and reaching those goals, right? Yeah, perfection essentially could be used as a benchmark, right? It could be used as a benchmark when reaching a year, 2 years, or in a lifetime. So, what the idea of perfection could be used for the good or it could be used for the bad. And it's all about the perspective associated with perfection. If your perspective with perfection is that it's a do-all and end-all, and then you must do it in any means possible, then that's really dangerous and negative. Or in the other sense, if you use perfection as a route to learn, a route to grow, a route to fail and improve, a route to aspire for, then that's absolutely great, And you could just, see from those two different notions, which one is being abused, which one is used for the bad, and which one is used for the good. The first one I mentioned, which was, the do-all and end-all. And if I don't reach it, I'm not worthy. If I, that unquenchable thirst they speak about in the Buddhism. And I've, got that term from Niall Breslin, a great podcast host, which I've been listening to for a while. And he spoke about the unquenchable thirst, where if you have that vigorous, perfected state, right, there's always an unquenchable thirst associated with that. For example, say you want this perfect car. Right? You get the car, you get it. But then that thirst is not quenched because you constantly want more and more and more. You want the next best car. You want the next best item and material. So if you set those perfection standards very vigorously and in a way where your life depends on it, it's very dangerous. You feel sort of attached to a notion which is in a way very important to you, right? So I feel like I'm waffling here, and this is a problem of not editing these podcast episodes, but I really want you to understand the raw version of what I'm sort of trying to get across here. I'm really trying to get across the idea that I don't want you guys to beat yourself up when you're not perfect, right? And you're listening to my episodes and you're doing all the opposite, right? You're comparing yourself, you're not loving yourself. Well, don't beat yourself up. You're only human. And I do that 100 times a day, man. It's no way I don't do that. I compare myself a lot. I sometimes don't love myself. I do all those stuff. And sometimes it's quite hypocritical of me of saying advice, but sometimes I fall into the trap of doing stuff, which is bad for me, obviously, right? But the main idea of this journey we're trying to go on is just improve ourselves, right? Just have the ambition to improve ourselves, have the hope that we can relay the knowledge we know, be vulnerable. And I'm really happy I'm doing these podcasts because it's really allowing me to show my authentic version, right? I really like being authentic by being vulnerable. And this is the best version of showing who I am, really. We've all gone through a lot, and it's very important that you guys always stick to who you are. Now, again, I'm waffling, and I just want you guys to know that don't change yourselves, right? So just to end this podcast, and by the way, I have edited this podcast a bit, I like to say, because there's been a fly in my room making a buzzing sound, and I had to guide him out my door. There's also been a number of times where I've just sort of waffled. Waffled meaning absolutely went off track. But, I just want to end this podcast episode with a touch of little advice I've learned, or observations I've learned from other podcasters, people I've met along the way, and so on. And one of them is embrace mistakes, man. Embrace mistakes. If you make a mistake at work, in your personal life, in a relationship, you embrace mistakes. No one is perfect. You're only human. And that's why I love that song by what's his name? Ragbone Man. Human is called, right? I just love it. You're only human, man. God, you're gonna make so many mistakes in your life, and I know myself. I've made a ton of mistakes, but without those mistakes, I could have not. I could have not grown. My growth would have not been that gradual. If I've never made a mistake, how do you grow, right? That's my main message. That's the whole idea, is that don't beat yourself if you're not reaching that perfect standard. Use it as a benchmark. And that's the best, having goals and standards for yourself is the best. But just don't beat yourself up when you don't reach those standards and goals. Realize it's just a gradual journey. And it should be a fun and enlightening journey, really. Not a vigorous and competitive journey where you're constantly trying to just nudge your way through, right? It feels very intoxicating and not nice, right? And that's the main idea of today's podcast episode. I tell you what, I've really enjoyed this podcast episode. It's just because I've been able to really be my authentic version and just cut out all that sort of trying to be perfect by constantly re-recording myself speaking. And let me tell you what, the other episodes I've made, I've constantly sort of took 3 to 4 takes for one specific section of the episode. Like, really, man, it was annoying, and I was getting tired of it. I was like, right, embrace these mistakes you've been making. Embrace the waffling. Embrace the fly in your room. And I should have done that today, but it was really pissing me off. But really, it's like, embrace it, man. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone is human. And everyone is just, it's normal. And that's the beauty of life, really. Anyways, that's the end of today's episode. I believe it's episode 6. I'm really happy to have done this episode. It's really cleared my mind. And these episodes really help clear my mind. Just relaying the information I know and sort of connecting to other people. It's really enjoyable. I really hope that everyone's having a good week and day, and I think I said that at the start, but I really want to touch upon that, is that really, I hope everyone's having a smile on their face or laughing. And that's, I hope everyone's having a good time at work, university, or elsewhere. So that's the end, and please put in some comments whether you want specific content about the flying room, or anyways, guys, see you next week, and next week's going to be an interesting episode as well. See you next week. Bye bye.